Hello and welcome to Indus News with me, Osman Lone. Well, we begin this hour with our top story, and that's in Pakistan, where at least 19 people have died and over 300 injured after an earthquake shook several parts of the country. The 5.8 magnitude quake was 10 kilometers deep, with its epicenter near Azad Kashmir's Mirpur city. Powerful tremors were felt in several parts of Pakistan, including Punjab, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Islamabad. Pakistan's military has started rescue operations, but there are reports that the death toll may rise. Well, I'm joined now by Lieutenant General Mohammad Afzal, who's the NDA chairman, the National Disaster Authority that is in Pakistan. General, thank you so much for joining us on Indus News. What can you tell us about the earthquake and what kind of relief operations are currently in place?
As you must be knowing, the earthquake was around 6.1 on the Richter scale, and its main point was somewhere between Jhelum and Mirpur cities, and there's a small town around 10 kilometers away from Mirpur named as Jatla is affected the most. There is also a small breach in a canal, which is Upper Jhelum Canal. And also, I would like to inform you that medical teams and rescue teams are already in the area. People are being taken care of.
General, my understanding is that Pakistan is a country with several fault lines going through it. Was there any preparation for such a scenario?
Well, let me tell you that at the moment we are in the phase of rescue. We have already arrangement in place for relief, and inshallah we will start working from tomorrow onwards, and your people are invited to come with me to the place, and we would start rehabilitation inshallah very soon. All the arrangements are in place. We can have a program, and I can discuss all the arrangements which have already been made for such eventuality in the country.
Thank you for your kind offer, but footage from the area shows roads and other transport infrastructures are completely destroyed. Does this present a problem for your rescue efforts?
Definitely, but you should understand that the area is fairly well developed, and our rescue and relief teams and especially medical teams are already in the area. So hopefully things would be under control very soon.
Lieutenant General Mohammad Afzal, thank you so much for joining us on Indus News. Well, Pakistan has warned India of dire consequences over any potential false flag operations along the line of control. Military spokesperson Major General Asif Ghafoor says any misadventure by India will have severe consequences for regional security. Ghafoor says irresponsible statements by the Indian Army echo its own failures in occupied Kashmir. He says such statements aim to distract global attention from India's state terrorism. He adds Pakistan's armed forces are fully prepared to respond to any aggression. Meanwhile, Foreign Office spokesperson Mohammed Faisal said India won't succeed in hiding its state terrorism with such diversions. Well, in a related development, 35 members of the US Congress have written a letter to the United Nations expressing concern over the crisis in Indian-occupied Kashmir. Writing to the UN envoy Kelly Craft, they said the Kashmir dispute needs to be resolved urgently as it could lead to nuclear war in South Asia. It said bilateral talks between India and Pakistan is of the utmost importance for global peace. The lawmakers said India has suspended the freedom of movement and communications in the valley since the 5th of August. Meanwhile, Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has met Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Iranian President Hassan Rouhani in New York. In separate meetings on the UN General Assembly sidelines, Mr. Khan updated both leaders on the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Indian-occupied Kashmir. Prime Minister Khan and President Rouhani have vowed to work together for peace and stability in the region. Khan and Erdogan vowed to work for the welfare of Muslims around the world, especially in the occupied valley. Earlier, PM Khan also met with the World Bank President David Malpass and discussed Pakistan's economy. Khan also met his Italian counterpart Giuseppe Conte and Swiss President Ule Mora, sharing details of the situation in occupied Kashmir. Well, in a related development ongoing with Kashmir, the police chief of Indian occupied Kashmir, Dilbagh Singh, admits the situation in occupied Kashmir is not normal. His statement contradicts Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's claims of normalcy in the valley. In an interview, Mr. Singh said over 3,000 Kashmiri youths have been arrested since the 5th of August. The police chief said there is no definite time frame for the release of Kashmiri politicians and leaders of the freedom struggle. Singh also refused to give any specifics on when the ongoing communications blackout in the valley will end. Well, amidst heightened tensions due to the Kashmir crisis, Pakistan is all set to open the doors of the Kartarpur Sahib corridor. The peace initiative by Pakistan will facilitate Sikh pilgrims from India to attend religious events at holy sites in the country. Our correspondent Sumaira Khan reports from Kartarpur.
Thousands of pilgrims travel every year from India to the shrine of the founder of Sikhism in Pakistan. They cross over at the Wagha-Attari border between the two countries, which is miles away from the mausoleum. To cut the journey short for the Sikh pilgrims, Islamabad took the initiative of constructing the Kartarpur corridor. The project includes a 4.5 kilometers road, an 800 meters long bridge and 76 immigration counters.
ये जो बाबा जी गुरुद्वारा साहब है, इसको हमने बहुत elaborate.
We have covered up this area from 4 to 408 acres and then 2 terminals. However, after the inauguration, we have thought of increasing its accommodation in phase 2.
Phase 2 में we have thought of कि हम जो इसकी accommodation बढ़ा दें.
A dedicated bus service will transport the pilgrims to the special parking lot recently built next to the Gurdwara. The project's entire infrastructure was painstakingly discussed with Sikh notables prior to the execution.
जब हमने ये काम शुरू किया तो
When we began this project, there were always negative and positive forces. Some people raise objections, saying that the cultivation and relics of the shrine must not be damaged. Many apprehensions surfaced. Mr. Sidhu also asked us to preserve the natural habitat of the shrine.
Please usko preserve करें.
The corridor is being developed and funded exclusively by Government of Pakistan. Islamabad plans to expand the capacity of the Gurdwara to host 10,000 pilgrims on a daily basis.
In Sikhism, serving humanity has a great reward. You cannot serve others through money only. It can be done in any way possible, like the one being done by Pakistan and the team working on the project.
Kartarpur was formally inaugurated on November 28, 2018 by Prime Minister Imran Khan. Pakistan is a land of peace and harmony where followers of all religions enjoy full freedom to profess and practice their creeds. And a strong demonstration of this resolve is construction of Kartarpur corridor for Sikh community by Pakistan for the first time. Reporting for Indus News, Sumaira Khan, Gurdwara Kartar Sahib, Pakistan.
US President Donald Trump says Iran is fueling wars in Syria and Yemen and its leaders are squandering the nation's wealth. President Trump made these comments while addressing the 74th session of the United Nations General Assembly in New York. President Trump says as long as Iran's behavior remains as it is now, sanctions will not be lifted. He said Tehran must not be allowed to get nuclear weapons. Speaking on the trade row with China, President Trump said Beijing is engaging in unfair trade practices and intellectual theft. President Trump also said that the US trade partners have acted in a bad faith. The US president called for drastic changes to the World Trade Organization, and Mr. Trump said the US will continue to push for Afghan peace talks. Well, as the Brexit saga continues, Prime Minister Boris Johnson says he respects the court's decision to declare Parliament's suspension unlawful, but insisted Britain must leave the EU on the 31st of October. More in this report.
Supreme Court President Lady Hale said the unanimous decision of the 11-member bench meant the suspension of the Parliament was null and of no effect.
The court is bound to conclude, therefore, that the decision to advise Her Majesty to prorogue Parliament was unlawful because it had the effect of frustrating or preventing the ability of Parliament to carry out its constitutional functions without reasonable justification.
The court ruled it is now up to the Speaker of the House of Commons to decide what to do next. House of Commons Speaker John Bercow welcomed the decision and said Parliament would resume on Wednesday.
Specifically, I've instructed the House authorities to undertake such steps as are necessary to ensure that the House of Commons sits tomorrow and that it does so at 11:30 a.m.
Following top court's verdict, opposition leader Jeremy Corbyn called on the Prime Minister to step down. At an annual Labour Party's conference in Brighton, Corbyn said Johnson should become the shortest-serving leader of the country.
So, obey the law, take no deal off the table, and have an election to elect a government that respects democracy, that respects the rule of law, and brings power back to the people, not usurps it in the way that Boris Johnson has done.
The Prime Minister has insisted Britain must leave the EU on 31st of October. But a law passed by the Parliament earlier this month demands he ask EU leaders for a delay if he does not get a divorce deal by a Brussels summit on 17th of October.
Well, for more on this story, we're joined by Mr. Alex de Ruyter, who's a Birmingham-based political analyst. Alex, thank you for joining us here on Indus News. So the UK Supreme Court has ruled PM Johnson acted unlawfully when he prorogued Parliament. Also, Jeremy Corbyn is asking for him to resign, as are some of his Tory MPs. Do you think he will resign?
Well, at this point, we've not had an official response from number 10 yet, but we've certainly seen calls from Jeremy Corbyn. We've seen calls from the Scottish National Party representatives in Parliament for him to consider his position, certainly. But I don't think Johnson is simply going to resign because of that. I think he has been determined to try and see Brexit through, as he puts it, by the 31st of October. But of course, what this ruling does do is limit his room for manoeuvre just that bit further. The extra week or so of parliamentary sitting time that this will entail, time for more scrutiny, more questions, and parliamentary committees to meet and so on, does certainly push him that bit harder.
What does this ruling mean for the UK's democracy, and what will the Queen's role be after it was clearly said in court that the advice given to her was unlawful, Alex?
Yes, well, therein is a key point. I mean, the court, with its unanimous judgment, has clearly made a statement that they regard parliamentary sovereignty as the cornerstone of democracy in the UK, and therefore that the government, in the form of the executive, is subordinate to Parliament in terms of the two key functions identified: scrutiny and accountability to Parliament. There are other key points, and it's for this reason that the court has upheld the earlier Scottish Court of Sessions ruling that this was unlawful. And of course, in so doing, it is mandated that it is up to the Speaker to determine how to go forward, and hence that the Speaker, Mr. John Bercow, has called for Parliament to reconvene as soon as possible. What does it mean for democracy? Well, again, to reiterate, the UK is a parliamentary democracy, and Parliament is sovereign. If people don't like the decisions that Parliament makes, if they don't like the level of scrutiny it offers on an executive in the form of the government of the day, then they can always vote them out for the next election. And indeed, I think this is Johnson's strategy, isn't it? Parliament is acting against the so-called will of the people, as he puts it, try and force them to an early election in the hope that he thinks he can get a majority thereafter.
Alex, thank you for that. That was Mr. Alex de Ruyter, who's based in Birmingham, and he's a political analyst and our Brexit specialist. Well, I'll be back with more news from around the world after this short break. Hello and welcome back to Indus News. Now, Iran has ruled out negotiating a new nuclear deal unless its signatories comply with the pact signed in 2015. Foreign Minister Javad Zarif has dismissed a proposal by the United Kingdom, France and Germany calling for a fresh nuclear accord with Iran. In a tweet, Mr. Zarif urged Europe to stop repeating what he called absurd US claims. Zarif said the 2015 nuclear deal failed because European signatories failed to fulfill their commitments. Earlier, France, Germany and the UK accused Iran of being behind the recent attacks on Saudi Arabia's oil installations. In a joint statement, the three governments said there is no other plausible explanation for the incident. The trio added that they support the ongoing investigation into the attack because it increased the risk of a major conflict. They said the airstrike underlines the importance of a political solution to the continuing conflict in Yemen. Well, in Yemen, Houthi rebels say airstrikes by government coalition forces have killed 16 people in Dalia province. 7 children are among the dead. The coalition has not yet confirmed the raid. In Libya, 20 UN-backed government troops were killed in airstrikes by eastern forces south of the capital of Tripoli. According to a statement from the Libyan Information Office, fighter jets targeted government positions in the Hira area. For the second day now, heavy fighting has broken out between the Libyan army and Khalifa Haftar's forces. The Libyan Air Force targeted Haftar's troops in the cities of Sabia and Souk al-Khamis. The Libyan Government of National Accord claims it killed senior members from Haftar's forces in the airstrikes. For over 5 months now, Tripoli has been caught in a vicious war between the UN-backed government and Haftar's army. And staying in the region, in Egypt, over 500 people were arrested after protests broke out against President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi over the weekend. In a defiance of a ban on protests, thousands of people staged demonstrations in cities and towns across the country, demanding el-Sisi's resignation. The Egyptian authorities detained an award-winning human rights lawyer after she attended a judicial investigation into the arrests. The demonstrations followed accusations of presidential corruption by self-exiled Egyptian businessman Muhammad Ali, who demanded his removal. El-Sisi has called the allegation lies. Such demonstrations are rare in Egypt since protests were effectively banned after the military staged a coup in 2013. In Iraq, 2 mortar shells have landed near the US embassy in Baghdad. Iraqi security officials say no casualties were caused by the attack. They say 1 shell exploded inside Baghdad's fortified green zone and another landed in the Tigris River. Military checkpoints close to the embassy were shut down following the attack. Security officials say no one has yet claimed responsibility. The attack comes amid heightened tensions in the region following recent airstrikes on Saudi Arabia's oil installations. Eight babies have died in a hospital fire in the Algerian city of El Oued. A preliminary inquiry said an electric short circuit may have caused the fire. The fire broke out in the hospital's maternity section. Over 70 people, including 11 infants, 37 women and 25 hospital workers were rescued. Algerian Prime Minister Noureddin Bedoui has ordered an investigation into the accident. The European Court of Justice has ruled Google does not have to remove links to sensitive personal data. The landmark case was brought by France for the right to remove all personal online links. Europe's top court decided the right to be forgotten rules do not apply outside the European Union. The judgment said Google is not bound to comply with requests to remove access to personal data. The judgment prevents the EU from acquiring powers to regulate the internet beyond its borders. Now, 5 EU countries have agreed to accept migrants saved from the Mediterranean. The deal is meant to be taking pressure off southern European states. Interior ministers from 4 EU countries met in Malta to sign the new deal on migrants. The plan will be presented to interior ministers from all 28 EU countries. Officials were anxious to sign up as many states as possible to resolve the contentious issue. Maltese Interior Minister Michel Farrugia says all or most EU countries should take part in the dispersal of migrants. Farrugia was joined at the meeting by his counterparts from Italy, France, Germany and Finland. Well, after a year on the streets, it was Greta Thunberg's moment at the UN Climate Summit. The climate activist said a raw, emotional speech, and the teenage activist asked world leaders, "How dare you?" More in this report.
Since landing on the US shores on a sailing yacht in August, the Swedish teen has shed light on the disastrous consequences of unchecked climate change. With a rousing speech, she questioned the legitimacy of solutions that have already been put forward.
For more than 30 years, the science has been crystal clear. How dare you continue to look away and come here saying that you're doing enough when the politics and solutions needed are still nowhere in sight.
The teen activist said ecosystems are collapsing and a mass extinction is underway. While addressing the summit, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said the world needs more ambition, more pressure, and old-fashioned truth-telling.
I want to tell you clearly, we can win this race. You can count on me to be on the front lines, pushing and prodding for climate action every step of the way.
Many heads of state addressed the climate summit and reiterated their efforts to fight global warming to safeguard against the hazards of climate change.
Well, at a rather secretive research site in Western Japan, roboticists are fine-tuning technology in an attempt to blur the line between man and machine. Genetic engineer Hiroshi Ishiguro believes recent breakthroughs in robotics and artificial intelligence will accelerate the rise of bionic replicas of humans. More in this report. This is Erica. She's smart, self-aware, and can help around the house. She's a robot who looks and acts just like a human and can even become your friend. Robots are already widely used in Japan for chores like cooking and even helping the sick and elderly. And robots can now independently learn to navigate around tight corridors and grasp delicate objects without damaging them.
We are improving our abilities by developing new technologies. Technology is a way of evolution. Therefore, we cannot separate human and technology, human and robot, human and AI. They're tightly coupled.
But robots also intimidate people because of the way they're shown in films like The Terminator. Tesla's Elon Musk has called for a global ban on killer robots. But Hiroshi Ishiguro insists there's no inherent danger in machines becoming self-aware or surpassing human intelligence.
I cannot believe this. Why, the Hollywood hate the robots so much, and Hollywood want to destroy this world with a robot so many times. It seems crazy.
The research group's ultimate goal is to see robots become a useful part of society. But will robots feature prominently in our future? Well, Hiroshi thinks the era of intelligent robots has already begun. Now, art lovers were treated to a huge exhibition at the Musée d'Orsay Opera in Paris, beginning the renowned French artist Edgar Degas' obsession with dance and movement. The show reveals Degas' hardly ever sketched in theatre, but instead his behind-the-scenes masterpieces are brilliant illusions of thoughts. More in this report.
20th century artist Edgar Degas used paint, pastel, pencil, even wax to offer a realistic glimpse of the rehearsal rooms where girls struggle to become queens of the stage. It has always been assumed that Degas worked behind the stage to produce his staggering pictures of its dancers, but actually it revealed later that all his masterpieces were only brilliant observations and imaginations. Henri Lauret, chief curator at the Musée d'Orsay, said all his scenes of opera are imaginary.
Degas' study was not only about the dancers, it is also its relationship with opera in general. The institution, the building itself, the people who inhabit it, the dancers, the musicians. It affects the way he includes figures in the scenery.
At the ballet, Degas found a world that excited both his taste for classical beauty and his eye for modern realism. As he became part of this world of pink and white, so full of tradition, he invented new techniques for drawing and painting it.
It's not about what's on the stage. It's not about spectacle. He does very few paintings of performances, very few paintings of the audience. It's about the life behind the scenes, this throbbing heart of the opera, which is people, performers, dancers, composers, all of these people who work so diligently to create the spectacle.
Today, Degas' masterpieces remain a highlight of the world's most famous museums, illustrating the timeless charm and the legacy of dancers.
Well, we'll be back with stories from the world of business and sports after this short break. Now in business news, European stock markets have crept up on cautious optimism about trade talks between the US and China next month. Oil prices have eased by 0.5% as concerns about global demand overshadowed doubts about Saudi Arabia's oil supplies. London's FTSE 100, the DAX in Frankfurt and Paris's CAC index are all trading fractionally higher. Gains were restrained by negative manufacturing data coming out of Germany and Japan. In Asia, the Nikkei 225 index closed flat after Japanese factory activity slowed down this year. The Shanghai Composite regained some of its yesterday's losses to trade 0.25% higher. Hong Kong's Hang Seng index was fractionally up after 6 straight trading days of losses. Well, it's 29 degrees here in Lahore, but let's take a look at the weather around the world. Well, that's all from me and the team here in Lahore, but I'll be back at the top of the hour with the headlines. Bye-bye.